Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Odoyo Owidi, Chairman, Lake Victoria South Waterworks Development Agency, one of the few agencies in Kenya with a name that is a whole paragraph. Good afternoon once again. I was coming to visit my old people, and they thought I am worth this. Thank you very much for that recognition. I will make a brief speech. It is going to be brief, but you are definitely going to find some content in it. I want to talk briefly about the Nile Basin Treaty of 1929 as related to climate, environment, and preservation. This is a treaty that many of you seated here only read about in books and in journals. But very few have taken time to study and note how this affects us, how this affects the rest of countries in Africa, especially on the riparian states of the Nile. First of all, a quick history. In 1929, that time East Africa was governed by the colonial government, and Egypt, fearing unknown issues, thought they needed to preserve the Nile for their use. What they did not know at that point in time, that all the waters of the Nile return to its sources and goes back to Cairo one more time. What they did not know is that preserving the source of the Nile was much more important than gagging the users of that Nile. What they did not know that one day science will help them know that we can all use the Nile and still have the same amount of water reach the Mediterranean Sea. It is time we all come together, have a scientific discussion, and agree on the way forward for the Nile. Incidentally, very many institutions, countries, organizations still fear that the Nile Treaty is still in place. Even without repealing it, I think it is overtaken by events. You cannot preserve water by gagging users of a river. What could have happened is that they could have participated in conserving the source of Nile. Today we want to plant 15 billion trees under the Kenya Kwanza government, under the bottom-up government, but Egypt is not going to plant a single tree. Egypt is not going to fund the planting of these trees. Egypt has never participated in conserving the rivers that feed the Lake Victoria, that feed the Nile, that they use. We need to rethink, and the thinking of a nation begins from its people, as down as us down here. Lake Basin Development Authority, right from its name and from its area of jurisdiction, should take the lead in this. One man with a clear voice, a clear agenda, and a good idea is what it takes to start a conversation in the correct direction. Probably one person sitting in the crowd here with a well thought out written or dispatched agenda is enough to change the historical injustice. Incidentally, recently, there was a dam being built in which Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt came together to deliberate on the future of the use of the Nile Basin. But curiously, in the name of that dam, there is the word renaissance. I think we need to look at the dictionary meaning of that word, and think through it. Why did they insert it there? It is time we also wake up. Because today we are building very big dams even around the lake, when the lake is enough dam to supply all of us. In fact, today I sat in a conversation in which there was a suggestion that if we were to pump the Lake Victoria water to one of the highest points around, we could have it flow to Northeastern by gravity. Northeastern probably needs Lake Victoria more than the Egyptians do. I think they deserve it more than the Egyptians do. But the Egyptians also should not fear, because this water is enough for all of us. All we need to do is to preserve its source. All we need to do is to understand the science behind it. The science behind it is that all water that leave that lake return there in the end. I do not know if somebody has come up with a research to show that the more we use that water, the lower the river goes as it approaches Cairo. I don't think there is anything like that. So let us start a journey with one step in which we put sense into this treaty. A treaty that was never signed by Kenyans themselves. If it were to be me, we would treat that treaty as if it did not exist. Why should Kenya conserve the sources of the lake, the river, and then also go spending billions to build dams when we could use the lake? Let's use it and see what will happen. And I think this is something that should go into the strategic plan of Lake Basin Development Authority on how to use that lake. We at Lake Victoria South Waterworks Development Agency, we have decided on our own that wherever our feasibility study finds it more economical to pump water out of that lake, purify and give Kenyans, is more economical than building a dam, we will not go for the dams. For we conserve that lake, for we preserve that lake, for that lake is our natural resource. I don't think there is any country in this world who would allow another country to write a treaty on its own natural resource discriminatingly like was done in 1929. Of course, we all understand at that point in time, not only us, but even the Egyptians did not understand much about the water cycle. Finally, but very important, we used to think, we used to believe that we cannot determine what climate we have in our countries. You can control your climate. We can. By our actions and inactions, we can. We can act by planting the correct trees, the correct vegetation along our rivers, on our lands, the correct ones. I'm very clear about that. Because I also learned recently that one eucalyptus tree consumes 250 liters of water per day. That is what a normal human being family needs. So if you have as many eucalyptus trees as the people around, it means you are using double the amount of water you're supposed to use. Recently, when I went to plant trees in the Mau, I was told after we had planted trees, after we had removed all the eucalyptus along the river, the level of the river rose. I don't know if there's scientific evidence, but that is what they told me. So let us deliberately control our climate for now and in the future. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.